Hey everyone, my name is Angela Hollowell and I am your host here at Melanin MVP. Today I am joined by Renee Hess, who is the founder of Black Girl Hockey Club. Ahead of our recording, Renee sent me a book that she wrote about all the ways that Black women show up in the hockey space. It feels almost like it's part firsthand experience, part research, part memoir, recounting these stories so that these stories are not lost. I feel that as an interviewer, my best work comes when I am simply a fan of something. So I would love to know, Renee, how you became a fan of hockey.
It's such a fun question because I think it was a process for me. I talk about it in the book. I was at an academic conference. I have worked in higher education for many years. I don't currently now, but I did for over a decade. And I'm an English nerd, so I got my master's degree in reading and my bachelor's degree in writing, and that's what I've always been interested in. And so after I graduated with my master's, the grind of going to grad school, I wanted to do something fun and frivolous. I had a good job, I had some extra money and time on my hands, and I was curious about sports because I'd never really engaged in sports when I was in school, and I'd always been convinced of the dichotomy between the nerds and the jocks, right? And so it just didn't seem like a place for me. But I had a friend who was also a writer in a similar vein as I, and I knew she was also a huge sports fan. And I did not understand how she could be a fan of sports, but also be a big nerd. It just didn't make sense to me. She's also queer. She's from the Midwest. It didn't add up. And I reached out to her and I said, okay, I know you like sports. Tell me about hockey. You know, I'm interested in this in a kind of academic sort of way, right? I'm curious, what's the big deal about sports? And she gave me a primer. You know, she told me which teams she was interested in. She told me what YouTube channels to watch and what Twitter accounts to follow, how to engage in hockey fandom. And I remember her telling me, become a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. That's the only thing I ask. And of course, me being contrary, I became a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. I'm wearing a Pittsburgh Penguins t-shirt right now, actually. And I kind of dove in head first. I was reading about hockey. I was watching videos. I was listening to games. And I had been at an academic conference a few years before in Pittsburgh. And I happened to be driving back to my hotel and see a game finishing, right? The end of the game, people were coming back, going to their cars, excited, happy. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm exhausted. I don't know how they can't be exhausted. A sea of black and yellow jerseys in downtown Pittsburgh. And I'm curious, what is this about? And so a few years later, when I asked the Penguins were, of course, the team that I was drawn to because I at least heard of them in my mind in years before. And so after researching and doing this kind of outside of the sport examination, I decided to go to a game. And I had never been to a live arena game of anything, basketball, football, anything. And so hockey was my first one, professional arena. I went down to Orange County, California, where the Anaheim Ducks play. And I saw the Dallas Stars, which were one of the teams my friends said I could be a fan of. And it was so much fun. The aesthetic of the game, the feel of the arena, the excitement in the crowd. It was something I had only felt in fandom spaces, but not in sports spaces. And once I gave myself over to being a fan of this, there was no turning back for me. I spent a couple years following the Dallas Stars and the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then all of a sudden the Penguins won the Stanley Cup. And then they won it again. 2 years in a row. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm stuck here because this is the most amazing feeling. Mind you, they haven't made the playoffs in 2 years and my favorite player is retiring next year, but we don't want to talk about that. They were an entry point to this sport for me. It almost immediately, particularly even in California where I live, we have 3 hockey teams, NHL teams, we have a couple AHL teams, but it doesn't feel like a hockey place. And I remember going to games here back in like 2016 and just wondering, where are all the Black folks? There's no Black people here, maybe Black guys, but I never saw any Black women in the stands. I was always the only one that I saw. And it was unnerving to walk into an arena with a couple of thousand people. And the only Black women I saw were taking tickets or selling refreshments. And they were always surprised to see me, right? And I knew that couldn't be the case, that in this huge, wide world, there had to be Black women who were interested in the sport like I was. And so I took to social media and I created a Twitter account called the Black Girl Hockey Club, and we had a group chat. And I started asking folks, where are all the Black girl hockey fans? Let's get in a group chat. Let's get together. Let's do something. I sent out a research survey because, like I said, I was still just out of grad school and I was curious about this phenomenon of Black women in hockey spaces. My marginalized folks in hockey spaces too. I didn't see much else besides cisgender white men in those spaces and white women as well. And come to find out, when I sent out this research survey, just a kind of a Google survey with a few questions on it, asking folks how they identify, if they had ever been to a game, why not? A lot of the folks who identified as Black, female, queer, had never been to a game because they were scared. They didn't think it was safe. And I understood that because I'd been in that space. I'd been in those arenas. And so I decided, let's get together. Let's go see one together. There's power in numbers. A lot of our Black girls who were hockey fans at the time were on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. And I'll attest, I don't know a lot of Black girl hockey fans out here. So I said, well, let's meet up on the East Coast. The Washington Capitals had just won the cup that year, and they did it with a couple Black players and a couple Black owners. They have Black owners out there, which is so cool. And they had recently opened the Smithsonian, for African American Smithsonian. And I was like, let's do it. Let's do it in DC. I'll travel out there. I'll stay with some friends that I had made in the year, and we'll go to a hockey game. Kim Davis from the NHL reached out to me and she said, hey, I'm Black, you're Black. You want to do this? I heard about it. Let's figure something out for y'all. And she did. She reached out and she connected us with the Washington Capitals hockey team. She connected us with the Smithsonian so we could go to the museum because that was something I really wanted to do when I was in town. And we had about 50 attendees come out to that first meetup, all the way from upstate New York down from Philly. They drove or traveled to Washington, D.C. because they heard that some Black women were going to get together and go see a hockey game. And I remember sitting in the locker room because Miss Kim had arranged for us to meet some of the players, the Black players, after the game. And I'm sitting in the locker room and I'm watching these little Black boys on their knees playing shinny with the indoor ball and stick situation. I'm watching the moms talk to each other, find out, hey, you're in New York, I'm in New York, I'm in New Jersey, you're in Philadelphia, changing phone numbers, networking, getting to know each other, finding out what they do for a living. And the one thing that was connecting us in that moment was hockey. And it was just such a profound realization that we could do so much as Black women in this space if we could get together and support one another in a community space. And Black Girl Hockey Club was born out of that. I really wanted some Black girls to hang out with and talk hockey. And I found some amazing women across the world, honestly, that are invested and engaged in a sport that I happen to love.
That is such a beautiful story. And I have to wreck it right now by saying that the NHL team closest to me is the Carolina Hurricanes, and they took out the Capitals this past season in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not mad because Black Girl Hockey Club, maybe 3 months after we went to the Capitals, we were at the Hurricanes arena for Pride. And
Nice.
It was so fun. They do some tailgating in that parking lot, which I had never done before. I mean, they had a whole sheet cake with the Black Girl Hockey Club logo on it. That's how invested they were in tailgating. It was so much fun in Carolina. And there's been a number of the NHL teams that have supported us over the years and that we have engaged with. I've been to so many arenas across the country and across Canada too, that I never would have thought that I would have had that opportunity. But to do so with Black Girl Hockey Club and then to meet Black women all across North America that love the game, it's just so much fun. So I'm not even mad. When I first started out, I was a fan of the Dallas team and the Pittsburgh team, and I refused to engage with Los Angeles because it seemed so basic. I'd grown up seeing Kings fans up and down, the logos and the jerseys and stuff. I knew they had won a cup and they had Wayne Gretzky at one point. Big deal. I didn't care. I didn't want to be a Kings fan. To find out the Kings have been such a big supporter of Black Girl Hockey Club over the years, and they've got some amazing folks of color, cool Black chick by the name of Sheena who works with the Kings that hooks us up every time we connect. So I can't even be mad at the Kings, which was the one team I was like, never.
I love it. I love it. But that's what someone making you feel as though your home can do for you, though. I also just want to echo your experience with the Pittsburgh team. Like when I came to North Carolina, I came from Columbus, Georgia, which is like near my hometown of Phoenix City, Alabama. And Columbus, Georgia's had two now like minor league teams. They've had the Columbus Cottonmouths and now they have the Columbus River Dragons. And there's a cult following there for sure, but it is like to the nth degree to experience fans who love the Hurricanes. They have the car tag, they have the car sticker, they have every jersey. They have the sign sticks. They have a puck that they swear by. That's their lucky puck. They know all the players' names, right? They try to go to the restaurant so they can run into the players on accident on purpose. Like, it's a whole thing, right? And it's like we constantly have these sold out games. But to your point, I've never gone to a Hurricanes game because I don't see anybody that looks like me that goes, which is dumb. I should go. I'm going to go. But because they're an incredible team.
We'll get a group together. It'll be fun.
I think it'll be amazing. It looks so much fun from the photos. And they seem like they're such a great team. They've won a cup. I think it was like in 2016. And they've been so close these past couple of years. It's almost heartbreaking to see them go out like that. But it's okay. Florida has taken them out twice. So now I think Florida is my team that I can't ever root for.
Don't let it do twisted. They do it twice and then you think it's safe. And then you're in my position where they haven't even made the playoffs for like 2 or 3 years. I don't know what's going on.
Man, but it's a beautiful thing, I think, to see people be passionate about something and then to want to be a part of that and want to be a part of that excitement and that passion as well. To that point, I have never been in a city where there was a women's hockey team. You've talked about a lot of the ways that women and Black women in particular show up in the hockey space, one as fans in the stands, people who work in these arenas, people who work in the front office. I think it's beautiful to see Black people in the front office of sports, which is such a huge, lucrative industry. So it feels right that we are represented in those spaces. But talk to me a little bit about your experience with women's hockey as a sport.
I think it's interesting, women's hockey, because when I was teaching back in 2013, 14, 15, I used to use women's sports as an example of wage disparity. And there was this really interesting mini documentary on YouTube about women's hockey that I would show my students. It's funny because now these players are scattered across what is the PWHL, but back then it was not that. It was the NWHL, I think, and the Canadian. They had 2 leagues. They had the American one and the Canadian one. And the way that the American versus the Canadian league ran their funds was different. And so we would talk about that in my class. And to watch how those 2 leagues morphed into the Canadian league doesn't exist anymore. It ended, I think, right before the 2018 Olympics. And ever since the 2018 Olympics, in which the American women's hockey team boycotted. And they said, we're not going to play unless you raise our wages and you treat us at least a bit like how you treat the male players, right? Own rooms and pay for our flights type stuff, right? And they boycotted up until the day before nationals. And they finally, the Olympic team allegedly sent out emails to college players trying to get them to scab, to come play, and to break the boycott that the women's national team was doing. And they wouldn't. They were unified, all the women's hockey players. Right before the nationals, they finally caved to the demands of the U.S. women's national hockey team. And then they flew to the nationals. I think they were in Idaho the next day. And won. They hadn't practiced together as a team, supposedly, at least officially, but they were ready and they won. And it's a testament to what women's hockey has been able to do over the last decade, because everybody discounts them. Everybody tries to pull the wool over their eyes and the rug out from underneath them and all those metaphors. But these players are passionate about hockey. Some of the players now that are in the professional women's hockey league, I just call it the PDUB, some of the players that are in the PDUB have been playing for over a decade. And they're finally getting to see the fruit of their labor here. They have a league, they have good owners who are supportive, who want to give them a decent salary. I remember telling my students that the highest paid player in the league at the time, about a decade ago, was making about as much as you would make working at Starbucks. And just to think that most of these women had to go to college, play hockey there, work full time, get a degree. And then if they wanted to keep playing, whether they were in the national team or not, they would have to work full time. And one of the young women who came to our very first meetup in Washington, D.C., her name is Kelsey Colzer. And at the time, she was a professional women's hockey player. She was playing with the New York team. I forget, it's had a couple iterations. I forget what the name was. And she lived in Philadelphia, and she would drive twice a week from New York to Philly to practice. And then on the weekends, she would play. And she had already graduated and she was working full time as well. And so she would work from 9 to 5, hop in the car, drive 2 hours, practice, turn around, come back, and then go to work in the morning. And that was how she lived her life. And just to know that these young women are now able to play hockey full time, to get paid. They might have gone through college, they might work, whatever, but they still have these opportunities that their foremothers really worked hard to bring to them. It's so cool. And we just got the announcement that the West Coast is finally getting some women's hockey teams. We haven't ever. The furthest they've come west is Minnesota. And so now we're going to get one in Vancouver and we're going to get one in Seattle. I'm super excited because those are really just a short plane ride away, right? So being able to get a group of Black women together to go see a women's hockey game on the West Coast hasn't happened, and I can't wait to do it.
So a couple of things here. First, I just want to say thank you for teaching me the lingo. Now I can start saying P-dub and sound like I know what I'm talking about.
I don't know if anybody else says it. It's just, I say the P-dub and people seem to know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so now I'm going to sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so P-dub. Cool, rolls right off. Second thing is I'm actually going to Seattle and Vancouver in August. So the first WNBA game that's ever going to be played in Canada is going to be in Vancouver. So I got tickets, not to flex on anybody, but I got tickets. It's a bit of a flex. It's a slight flex, okay? But they're also playing the Atlanta Dream, which is also one of the few Southern teams, and like they're popping this year. So of course I have to go see them. But the reason I bring up the WNBA is because they feel like they're at a similar decisive point. They are negotiating their CBA deal right now with the WNBA as an entity. And one of the main things is pay disparity, right? They feel like they're not getting their fair share of, based on the work they've done to help grow the league, and they are the product. They want greater player protections, and that comes in really particularly around motherhood and providing more protections for mothers in the league and people who want to be mothers in the league. And that's something that you've mentioned, glossed over a little bit. You mentioned that there were some mothers on that first trip to DC. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. And maybe you discuss this in your book as well, about how mothers show up in the hockey space. I'm not a mother, so maybe naturally I just didn't even consider that. But I think that is very important to think about, not just from a player perspective, but also from a fan perspective, from a front office perspective, from a parent of a player perspective, all those things.
In the book, I have a chapter, and the book, by the way, for listeners, it's called Blackness is a Gift I Can Give Her, and on race, community, and Black women in hockey. And there's a chapter actually called Hockey Mamas. And in it, I talk to a couple players about their mothers and how their Black mothers showed up for them in hockey spaces. And then I also talked to parents of Black children playing hockey. And I say it like that because not all the parents of Black children are Black. And so it's an interesting study on how a non-Black parent shows up for their Black child in those times, and also the experiences of the Black kid on the ice and watching how their parents get treated if they're Black, and how their experiences are as well. And it's really interesting. It's one of my favorite chapters because that's probably like one of the biggest demographics that I personally engage with, because I consider myself a hockey auntie. My daughter did not play hockey. We're from California, so she played water polo. But it's a team sport. There's a ball, there's a net. You got to get it in there. It's pretty rough. I call it water hockey, not ice. It's pool water.
Close enough.
Close enough. But in the book, I talk about how it's not easy to watch your Black child get treated differently because they're Black. And how can we, as a hockey community, whether we're also Black or not, support these mothers in these spaces? The answer is obviously community. Having a community that will uplift these families is a theme of this book, obviously. We talk a lot about how they grew up. I mentioned Kelsey. There's a section on Kelsey and how she was brought into the hockey world she's biracial, and so her mother's white, and she was raised with her mother and around her mother's family, so they were always in the hockey rink, right? Her experience is a little bit different than, say, Soraya Tinker, whose mother's white and her dad's Black, but her dad was the hockey fan. And he was the one who was taking her to the rink. And he was the one who introduced her to the game. That story is different than Joel Ward, who now is a assistant coach with the Henderson Silver Knights, the AHL team to the Golden Knights in Las Vegas. And he told me about his mom and how she really struggled back in the 80s and 90s when he was playing, early 2000s, because he was a big Black boy on the ice getting abused and roughhoused and talked down to. And she actually, I believe, stopped going to his practices at one point because she just couldn't handle seeing all the nonsense. She didn't want to whoop nobody, I guess. Mama Ward. But we also talked about how valuable a community like Black Girl Hockey Club would have been to her at the time to have that kind of support. And so what we like to do as an organization, we have different programming. One of our programs, we have a leadership and development program. We have the Get Uncomfortable campaign, which is an anti-racism advocacy campaign. And we have scholarships, right? We do meetups and stuff like that. But we also do scholarships for young Black girls playing hockey between the ages of 9 and 18. And one thing that we like to do in those scholarships, around those scholarships, is get everybody together on a Zoom call. The kids that won the award, their parents, their coaches, anybody who wants to celebrate and support them. And then we just love on them. We introduce them to each other. We tell the moms, look, if you need to vent, if you have questions, email me. I might know somebody that knows somebody. And there's a story in the book about how when I was sitting down to interview a young Black girl hockey player from Los Angeles, actually, her name is Lincoln Brown, her parents started talking about wanting to go to boarding school, wanting to send her off to boarding school. She was about 12 at the time, and they didn't have any clue how to do that. They didn't know any connections. They didn't know how much tuition was. They didn't know if there were scholarships. And they told me their coach wanted to keep Lincoln on the team and never really gave them that information. And they didn't have any parents that they could talk to about it. And while we were talking, I said, okay, hold on. I'm putting a different hat on now because I know somebody whose son goes to boarding school and I can connect you. It's a Black guy. He lives in the Midwest. I think he would be happy to help. And I connected them. And I remember a couple months later, I get a picture with Coach Mike and Lincoln at the school that she wanted to go to. They're visiting for open house day. And then a couple weeks later, I get a text from her parents saying she got a full ride for her first year. And that was all because of those connections, those in Black hockey communities. And because of that, we decided we were going to do a YouTube video about how to get your Black kids into hockey boarding schools, because that type of information is gate kept often, right? And that type of information, you got to know somebody who knows somebody. And so we knew somebody, and we got him to come on our YouTube channel, and we talked about the enrollment process, how to get scholarships, how the culture of campus was, what to look for, what to look out for, and those real questions that Black parents have when they're putting their child in a space like hockey that has been historically unsafe for them, because there's still so many stories about racism in youth hockey and in professional hockey as well, and sexism and homophobia and Islamophobia. All of those things are prevalent because hockey is steeped in white supremacy, right? Like, just like so many of our systems, it's entangled in this negativity that we as Black folks have to navigate. And so it's been really fulfilling to be able to connect with those parents, particularly the mothers, and let them know that if they have questions like that, just ask. If they want to vent, if they want to cry, if they want to share accomplishments. Just this weekend, I got a text from one of our scholarship girls' grandfathers who sent me a nice long paragraph updating me on everything that his grandkid had been doing for the last 2 months. And just for me to acknowledge it and say, that's amazing. Congratulations. She's worked so hard. And sometimes you don't have anybody in hockey spaces to even tell you that. So that's my favorite part, is connecting with the parents and the grandparents and the aunties and the cousins who just love the sport because their kid loves it. And they're there to support their child in whatever direction hockey might take them. And we always tell them, you don't have to be a professional player. You don't have to be a national player. You play as long as you want. We're going to be here for as long as you want to be here. And not all these kids stick around. Like, you get middle schoolers who pick up a sport for 2 years and then drop it. It happens all the time. But that's not the point. The point is the community.
I love that. Thank you. I think that's so important for people to hear, because I'm sure there's a parent of a kid right now who maybe wants to try this sport, and it's like, okay, who am I going to talk to about this? So it's nice to know that it's not just going to games, which is incredible and fun and amazing and a great way to connect, but it's also like supporting people at different parts of the process of engaging with the sport of hockey. Speaking of which, the NHL just finished. We're not going to say who won the Stanley Cup. The P-Dub.
That team down there.
We don't know them.
The boys and the girls. The boys won. I happened to turn it on right when they were hoisting the cup on the ice. I honestly had no idea who was playing in the finals. I had blocked it out apparently. But yeah, that was cool. And then the women played also, and we're really excited about that because Minnesota happens to have one of the Black Girl Hockey Club board members on that team, Sophie Jacks, only Black woman on that team. And she's won the Walter Cup 2 years in a row. So not going to say that it's because Black Girl Hockey Club has good karma, but we have good karma. So I'm not surprised. She just actually got traded to Vancouver, I believe. So that's pretty cool. That's exciting.
Was that an expansion draft, or was that like because like they can't technically?
Draft, yeah, okay. The expansion draft hit Vancouver and Seattle. And I want to say that Sophie, like the four big Black players in the league went to the West Coast teams.
Oh, nice.
I'm a happy camper. I'm going to hit both of them.
Okay, so it sounds like I got to make a second trip that is more hockey focused, because the current Seattle-Vancouver trip is WNBA focused.
Well, BGHC is planning to be at the Seattle opener in the fall.
Okay.
And you are invited to come and hang out with us. If you're interested in coming up to Seattle to see a hockey game, nothing better than a season opener with Black Girl Hockey Club.
Oh, slight flex. One thing I do think is cool, when I first went to Seattle, like 2019, like the Seattle Kraken was everywhere. So I really hope like the Seattle team just takes over all the billboards in Seattle and just makes their presence felt. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe hockey teams just know how to spread the energy throughout a city really well.
It's a fun game and the energy really cannot be beat. But there's something to be said about going to a hockey game with Black Girl Hockey Club, because we roll it in there like we Beyonce. Like, we're the entertainment for the night. We're just having a good time, taking up space and enjoying being recognized as a pillar in the hockey community. It's so much fun. We would love for you to come out and join us.
I'm so glad that like when you introduced the first game that you guys went to as like a group, You were like, oh, it's 50 of us rolling deep. We all do.
Rolling deep.
I
Sis.
love it. I love it.
It's not always like that. It takes some time and cultivation to make a big group like that. Oftentimes, we might have 4 or 5 of us, or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 of us, but it's always fun because there's just something about knowing that there's safety in numbers, there's community in numbers, and you're sharing space with a group of folks that are like-minded, open-minded, there to have a good time, but also there to keep an eye out on each other and to support one another. And honestly, when you walk into a hockey arena, there's no better feeling. I've gone so many times, like with my family, by myself, with a friend or something like that, and it's not the same. It's really not. I like it and all, but it's just not that flex, that vibe.
It's so funny. But I think to your point, like, for that to be your first kind of get together, it was good that it felt like a flex because the Capitals knew you were coming. They probably were not 100% sure who all was going to show up and what the final number was going to be. But for them to walk into a locker room and see like, whoa, like there's demand, like there's space for this. And how long have we been ignorant to that? I think really important. So it doesn't matter if it's 4 now. The fact that it was 50 to start is like what makes the most impact.
I remember there's an interview with Devontae Smith-Pelly, who was playing with the Washington Capitals at the time, real big influence in the Cup finals as well for that team. He doesn't play with them anymore, but he did. And he came down to the locker room to say hello. And we were bustled and hustle and bustle and whipped around and talking to media and talking to each other and taking pictures. And so I missed the moment when he was being interviewed, but there was a quick interview in the hallway with him that I saw later on when I was back home. And he was talking about that exact thing. He did not know that there were that many Black women who enjoyed hockey. And he thought it was so cool to be able to see Black women supporting him in this sport because he had never seen it, like besides his mama. And after that, I was able to connect with his mom. And it's just really cool to be able to support not only the Black women in hockey spaces, but their sons as well. And these Black boys who are playing hockey, enjoying something, putting a lot of time and energy and soul into the game, and to let them know that we got their back. That's just what we do. We got their back. And if we don't, we're going to keep quiet about it.
So how I found out about Black Girl Hockey Club, what you call BGHC. So I'm learning all the terms. Okay. Was through a partnership that you guys did with the Just has some limited edition merch and a percentage of sales go to BGHC. Talk to me about how that partnership came to be and what you guys hope to do with the money that you guys are raising.
Yeah, we're really lucky to have some great partners. If you visit our website at blackgirlhockeyclub.com or .org, we have a scholarship page and then we have a partnership list at the bottom. And some of our biggest supporters are these huge like sports organizations. And the one that helped generate this particular partnership was Bauer for hockey. They do hockey equipment. A couple years ago, they gifted Black Girl Hockey Club with a $100,000 equipment grant. So we've got deep pockets when it comes to being able to give away hockey equipment to our players. And so we gift them that a few times a year. And they have worked tirelessly to make sure that Black Girl Hockey Club has engagement, that folks know about us. I don't want to get her title wrong, but one of the executives for Bauer, her name is Mary Kay Messier. You might have heard of her brother. He played hockey at some point. But Mary Kay, she runs Bauer for the most part. In my eyes, she does. And, excuse me. She runs Bauer, and she had reached out to us a few months before saying, hey, I'm working on this for Black Girl Hockey Club. Are you interested in a partnership with the GIST? Where they were the ones that created those jerseys for the PWHL with the amazing art on the front of it. She did all the legwork and just looped us in at the end saying, this is happening. You're the benefactor. make it happen, put out the press release, whatever you want to do. And we're just so grateful because it gets us and what we're doing in our organization at Black Girl Hockey Club in the eyesight of folks like you who's a sports fan, a Black woman, talking to other Black women about Black Girl Hockey Club. We like to branch out. We're hockey fans first and foremost, but in the last few years, we've got together and gone to soccer games, right? We've gone to WNBA games. A couple years ago, we held our annual summer board meeting in Vegas so we could go see an Aces game live. We're women supporting women in sports spaces. And I think that giving out that love gets it back tenfold to us, because when we are in a sports town, we're connected to not just the hockey folks, but the Black women in journalism, in sports journalism, the Black women sports executives, the ones who have similar experiences and maybe nobody to share it with in those spaces. Just like I always say, Black Girl Hockey Club is not just for Black girls. And it's not just for hockey fans. It's for folks who want to come together and build a community space that's safe for everyone, particularly for Black women, led by Black women. And if you come into our space with that mindset, you're just going to have a good old time. That's all it is.
I love it. I love it because I've had a great time talking with you today, Renee. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great meeting you, Angela.